Hi everybody. Today we'll discuss a cool problem of finding a maximum area of an island. Island is represented by the ones, and the aggregated ones or a single one is also an island, while zero is a water. So we have to find in this 2D array, which is a club of ones which has a maximum land. So uh, and So what we'll do is we'll use DFS and we'll count how many ones are there in that DFS and which ones of that is the max. So first of all, we'll begin with our validation that the input is right by the user. So if array is null and array dot length is less than 1, there is no column. 0, and then we will find out how many rows are there in the array, how many columns are there, which will be, we will pick the first row and find its length. And we declare the auxiliary arrays, which denote the positions which have been already visited while we are doing a DFS, so that we do not revisit each position again. And how do we traverse? We traverse in different directions. So we will have a array, a 2D array of the directions where we can go, because there are x and y denotes a direction. So we'll have a 2D array, and there are 4 directions we can go, right? Either to the left, either to the right, either up, or either down. So how do we move left? We decrement x. How do we move right? We increment x. How do we move up? We increment y. How do we move down? We decrement y, right? And we'll just mark it as directions. And we will have to start with a 0, with a 1, and anything which is 0 we have to ignore. So what we do is we start traversing the rows of the matrix, right? And then we have our answer, which is int max. Initially it is 0, and what we do from here is we start uh, doing the traversal. If I and j in the array, this is arr, is equal to 1, if and it is not already visited, I and j is not already visited, right? Then we try to visit it. We mark it as visited true before we visit every element, and then we say max is equal to math.max of the existing max. And while we traverse, because this is a starting point, we will first define a method which is a DFS. So we'll say a DFS returns how many items, how many ones are there in this DFS. So it returns int because the question says that the length of each dimension in the grid does not exist 50, so it cannot be long, even if the whole array is one, whole 2D array is one. So we declare DFS, we pass the positions I and j, and we pass the array the input array, we pass the 2D array that keeps a track of which node is visited and which is not. And then we pass the 2D array of directions. Okay. So as we know that anything which is not a land has to, we should not traverse it. So how many ones are there in that area? Zero, because it is not a land at all. So we say if is equal to zero, then if it is a water, return zero, nothing to iterate. We should not move forward from here. Okay. And then if it is a land, so how many uh, ones are there till now? It is one, right? It is already one, right? And then if it is already one, so we are sure that the answer is at least one, even if it is surrounded by the water. So, but we would like to go forward. So and we will go in each direction, right? And then in each direction, what we do is we find out the new coordinates from where on where to go, right? And a new y will be in that direction, which is already specified, 1 plus j. So but here we have to check that if it is a valid x and y, because x and y can go out of the matrix, right? And it can also be already visited, so we should not visit it again, right? So we'll just have a new method which will take care of the validity check of the new coordinates. So we'll private boolean is valid. It takes int x, int y, the position. It takes the input array. It takes the 2D array of the matrix that stores if any node is already visited or no. So what has to be within the matrix? So if x has to be greater than equal to 0, and x has to be less than or equal to arr length minus 1. That means the number of rows. And y also has to be greater than equal to 0, and y has to be within the number of columns. So we pick the first row, find its length, and minus 1, because we are starting from 0. And then this position x and y has to be a land, and it should not already be visited, right? Because if it is already visited, we would not like to revisit it again. So we'll call is valid from here, and we pass x, we pass y, we pass arr, we pass visited. And if it is valid, what we do is we already know that at least the answer is count. So anything which is surrounding to this one is a one, we will add to the answer. We will call DFS from here. What does DFS takes? X, Y, which is a new coordinates array, visited, direction, directions array, right? And then once this for loop finishes, uh, hang on, I think there is a formatting problem. Okay, so if when this for loop finishes, that means all the neighboring uh, ones have been traversed, we just return how many ones were encountered in this traversal, right? So we'll just add the comments. If direction is valid, and then we'll call this method from here. It takes I, it takes J, it takes ARR, it takes visited array, and it takes directions. And then once this for loop finishes, we know that the answer is max, which we have calculated. We'll just review the code again so that there are no compilation errors or typos. Mhm. Is valid. Okay. Visited directions count, and here 1 0 minus 1 max is this. Okay, so let's just run this and see if there are any issues. Mhm. Okay, so I'll just fix this. Okay, so I have added visited is equal to true because before we visit any element, any position, we have to mark it as already visited, so we do not visit it again. Okay, so with that, I'll just end the demo.